What is going on, Bucs fans and CFP fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you with yet another video talking about the Buccaneers. And today we're going to be reviewing studs and duds from the Buccaneers Week 14 win, a massive win against the Atlanta Falcons, 29-25. Obviously, they came back in thrilling fashion, were able to win it in the last couple of seconds there as Baker Mayfield hit Keke Coutee for a touchdown. But with that being said, let's get right into the studs and duds list. We have a couple named for both lists, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. We're going to start off with the studs, and we're going to start with Rashad White. Now, Rashad White had 25 carries for 102 yards. His long was only 12 yards, but look, towards the end of the game, the Buccaneers were really attacking this Atlanta rushing defense, and it was working, and Rashad White was a big reason why. But Rashad White also contributed big time in the passing game. Only had 2 catches, but one of them was a 31-yard touchdown on a screen pass. So well executed, really good blocks downfield for Rashad White, but nonetheless, he gets credit with the score. So Rashad White was definitely a stud, and he continues to be really good so far for this Buccaneers team, especially as of late. The last few weeks, he's been really, really good, really productive running back here for the Buccaneers, which I think has been a key in the offense sort of looking a bit better as Rashad White finally starting to get going. This running game finally starting to get going a little bit. So I would say Rashad White is definitely a stud for that offense. Now, if we're going to be talking about another stud, we got to go with the guy who caught the game-winning touchdown. Again, only had 2 catches, but one of them was a game-winning touchdown. 11-yard game-winning touchdown by Keke Coutee. 2 catches for 16 yards, but hey, it was the one that counted the most, right? Great separation. Good catch. I mean, obviously a really good throw by Baker Mayfield, but also a pretty good catch by Keke Coutee to secure it and be able to ensure the Buccaneers could win. I mean, this is also not the first time Keke Coutee has done this year. You remember, obviously, I know Bucs fans will probably want to forget, but the game in Houston, Keke Coutee was the one who caught the late touchdown that gave the Bucs the lead. Unfortunately, the Bucs couldn't hold it that time, but this time they could, and it paid off. So Keke Coutee is really Mr. Clutch for the Buccaneers. I remember that late touchdown against the Rams last year as well. So has really come up clutch in some big situations for the Bucs, and this was no different. Now we're going to move on to the defensive side of the football. And there's actually a couple here because even though the defense struggled at times, I did think some individual performances were quite good. Zion McCullum is going to be a stud for me. He led the team in tackles, 9 total tackles, 3 assists, and had 1 forced fumble. So Zion McCullum was really good for the Buccaneers on Sunday, and his progression continues to be good. And without Jamel Dean in the lineup because of injury, Zion McCullum is a guy that needs to step up, and he has so far. So the Buccaneers have really benefited from Zion McCullum's development in year 2, and hopefully he can continue to develop in order to bring some more cornerback depth to this Tampa Bay roster. Because Jamel Dean and Carson Davis, as we've seen with both players so far this year, they're not always 100% available. So a guy like Zion McCullum stepping up and playing well is huge for this defense. Another guy, Anton Winfield. Now, we did have the lapse in coverage on the Kyle Pitts touchdown, but he made up for it with a forced fumble that ended up in a safety for the Buccaneers. Ended up being massive there towards the end. Had 8 total tackles, 4 assists, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. Also had an interception, which was taken away by a penalty by Carson Davis. But Anton Winfield continues to play fantastic football for the Buccaneers, and it is crazy that he is not even listed on the Pro Bowl voting thing. I know the Pro Bowl doesn't really matter, but just still crazy to me. But he's absolutely a stud on this Tampa Bay defense. Also going to shout out KJ Britt, who had 8 total tackles, 4 assists. I thought Britt played well and filled in for, obviously, Servase Dennis, I believe, was back, but Britt was the starter, and he played well. He played quite well. And for the Bucs, being without Devin White, you might get a preview of next year. Like, if Devin White's not back, it could be Lavonte David if he's back, KJ Britt, and Servase Dennis as kind of those 3 guys that are going to be looking to fill in those linebacker spots. And KJ Britt was really good on Sunday for the Buccaneers. Almost had an interception as well in that game. So definitely something to keep an eye on going forward as KJ Britt looks to develop a bit more. And also the future of Devin White, because if KJ Britt and Servase Dennis continue to play as well as they have, yeah, I think the chances decrease that Devin White could be back. Like, I think they decrease. So I don't know how high they are already, but I think it could be even lower if those guys continue to develop. So definitely keep an eye on that. We're also going to shout out Carson Davis. Had an interception, did have the penalty, right, that I mentioned, had the penalty, but he had the interception, and he looked good. I mean, he looked pretty, and honestly, since he's come back from injury, he's looked better than he did before. So it's really, really good for the Buccaneers defense. Zion McCullum and Carson Davis being quite good has been huge the past few weeks for the Buccaneers. And if those guys weren't good with Jamel Dean being out, you combine that with Lavonte David missing a few games here. Obviously, he just returned, but you combine that with one of your better defensive players missing. Vita Vea was not even in this game, and it could have been a recipe for disaster for the Buccaneers. But Carson Davis was good. Came out with a big turnover that resulted in 7 points. So really made a difference in that game. We have to move on to the duds. Unfortunately, we have to move. And look, I'm going to do honorable mention here because I think he falls into both. And if it wasn't for the last drive, he would have been a dud. But with leading the game-winning drive, I can't give Baker Mayfield a dud. But I also can't give him a stud because he just didn't play well in the game. He played well down the stretch, was 14-29, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 0. Not even a fumble. That's important. That is completely important. And we talked about it before in the pregame show. Like, Baker Mayfield was going to limit the turnovers. He did just that. So he's an honorable mention. He's right in the middle. I'm not going to have him as a stud or a dud. A dud, I'm going to say, is Mike Evans. That's not really necessarily his fault. Only had a few targets, but 1 catch for 8 yards. A.J. Terrell really did a heck of a job on him. The Falcons, as a team, did a heck of a job on Mike Evans. But this is the type of game where you want Mike Evans to really get going, and it didn't happen. So Mike Evans is a dud, but like I said, not really necessarily his fault, just sort of how it goes. Another dud is Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett had 4 total tackles, 2 assists, no sacks. But the Falcons were playing at one point without 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. And I even asked on the postgame show, I was like, I didn't even see like Shaq Barrett played. Shaq Barrett has really struggled at times this year. There's been flashes. There has been flashes, but he's coming off a major injury last year, trying to work his way back, and it's just not happening for him right now. So hopefully down these final 4 games, he can get a little hot. Pass rushers can sometimes be streaky. Like, once you get one, you can get a couple more. So hopefully if he gets going, that could benefit the Bucs pass rush. But he's a guy that they need. Speaking of pass rush and the guy that they need to step up, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, 3 tackles, 1 assist, and also got stiff-armed by Desmond Ridder on that touchdown, which could have almost ended the Bucs season. Like, we said the Bucs needed to win that game. That was the touchdown that gave the Falcons the lead. Like, it could have been catastrophic there if Baker Mayfield and the offense didn't march down the field and score a touchdown, because yeah, you can't have that in that situation. And Joe Tryon-Shoyinka right now has been one of the most disappointing players for the Buccaneers so far this season. And as a former first-round pick, he's just not being productive enough. And the Bucs have a big decision to make on whether to accept his 5th-year option or not this season. So he's going to be entering his 4th season. The 5th-year options work for first-round picks. You have to decide whether you're going to accept or decline it before their 4th season. Right now, it's an easy decision for the Buccaneers. They will be declining his 5th-year option. I would be shocked if they accepted that 5th-year option. So Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is a guy that absolutely needs to step up. Hasn't done it so far for the Buccaneers. And it's a big reason why their pass rushers struggled. Like, they're counting on guys like Shaq Barrett, like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and invested a lot. They invested a first-round pick in a Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. They invested a lot of money into Shaq Barrett, and these guys just aren't being as productive right now. So with that being said, those are the studs and duds for the Week 14 game against the Atlanta Falcons. A huge win for the Buccaneers, 6-7 now on the season. They're first place in the NFC South right now. They're not out of the woods. Obviously, they have Green Bay coming up, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and they finish out with Carolina. So not out of the woods for anybody on this coaching staff, any of these players quite yet. They still could miss the playoffs. They still could lose out in the NFC South, but they're looking like in a much better position than had they lost that game. because had they lost, it would have been a whole different conversation right now, and we'd be talking about a lot of different things. So let me know who your studs and duds are. Is it the same? Is it different? Let me know what you agree, what you disagree with. Always curious to hear that in the comments. Please, if you want to watch the game recap show, which we did here immediately following the game on YouTube, you can check that out, Campfire Podcast. Also listen to that wherever you listen to a podcast. We also just did a State of the Bucs kind of show with Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus. Great show. Really had a lot of fun talking to Trevor. Always have fun talking to Trevor. And that is also available on YouTube and everywhere you listen to a podcast. So be sure to check them out. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And go Bucs.
Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again.